Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Also joined right now by a real-live UFC fighter, Luke Rockhold, going to be part of the main event on January 15th, the arena at Gwinnett Center. Going to be taking on Costa Philippou. He's kind of a mean-looking dude, man. You're a nice-looking dude, man. You have a kind face, but he doesn't. Look at him.
Yeah, he's got some bad facial hair, you know.
The goatee, right?
The goatee, no. We only do mustaches around here.
I want to ask you this. What makes a guy want to make – this is a tough way to make a living, my friend. What makes someone want to do this? This is tough.
You got to have it in you. I don't know. I love fighting. I was the youngest of three brothers. Took my beatings and
well, there it is, right there.
You know, I get a thrill out of it. I don't know. It's a huge thrill. It's a huge high, and there's nothing like it. And I couldn't imagine doing anything different.
What was your road to the ring like? When you think about, you know, I saw your bio from Santa Cruz, California, not exactly the hard scrabble streets of Santa Cruz, kind of the mellow dude area up there in the hills. How'd you find your way to the MMA ring?
You know, that's what people think of Santa Cruz is all hippie and this and that, but you know, actually the locals in Santa Cruz, we got a rough kind of a rough crowd out there. We the surf culture out there gets pretty hostile, and you know I've fought some battles out there, and I definitely had a lot of street fights, and that's what kind of led me. I came from wrestling and judo and all this background of grappling, and then I was having these street fights, and I wasn't using it whatsoever, and I was just standing toe to toe and throwing punches and winning fights, and you know, kind of protecting our side of town and you know beating the bullies up, and I was never like, you know, looking for fights, but I was quick to put somebody in their place, you know, that was on the wrong side of things. And so, you know, that kind of led me in.
I want to ask you about your relationship with Herschel Walker. Guy's 50 years old, built like he's 26 years old, and he appears to be legit in the sport.
Taught me everything I know. Herschel's awesome. Herschel was a cool experience. Him coming out and training with us. You know, I was in a rough spot right there. I was kind of building through my career, and you know, I was crashing on his couch at the hotel, and we'd have, you know, room service and everything. It was kind of good life right there for a while. But you know, he's Herschel built himself up and won some good MMA fights. I mean, he really, you know, was a student of the game, and it was always like, you know, into martial arts. And so when he came in, he was really eager to learn, and he learned a lot. And you know, I think he proved himself as a mixed martial artist, and he'll be there. He'll be there in my corner Wednesday night on January 15th. So stoked. You know, it was a good relationship, and he's been a good friend ever since.
Tickets go on sale this Friday. Sorry, Randy. At 10 a.m. through GwinnettCenter.com. That's Rockhold versus Philippou. Let me ask you this real quick before we get back to Randy. So many different disciplines involved in mixed martial arts. It almost seems like it's kind of an intellectual type of combat because there's just so many different variables. So many fighters have different disciplines they're really astute at.
Yeah, you got to think think your way through the fight. There's a lot of different aspects. There's grappling. There's the standing realm, the kickboxing, and then there's wrestling. So you can take it into any avenue you know you want, and I think that's what makes me good. Is I'm well rounded. I can do anything, and you have to, you know, improvise at different times. And so it's not always the super athletes that can converge and win these, you know, in fighting. You have to, you know, be technical and all that. So, but when you get, you know, these athletes that can think their way through the fight, those are the people that, you know, usually end up on top. You know, you've seen a lot of these athletes kind of come into the game. It used to be a lot of like out of shape guys that just kind of knew some technique, and now it's kind of you know, it's hitting its peak, and it's getting funner and it's getting better and better for the fans.
Hey, Luke, could you give us a contrast and similarities between this opponent and maybe a guy like Vitor Belfort, who you fought not too long ago?
Well, if there's anything, they both got good boxing, but Vitor is definitely a lot more dynamic than what Philippou brings to the table. And but Philippou's sharp. He's got good boxing, and he's made it work for him. He's won a lot of good fights in the UFC, and you know, I'm not sleeping on him. It's going to be fun.
This is going to be a big arena guys get to fight in. Talk about the growth of the sport. It seems like when it first came out, it might have been just a little bit too violent, a little bit too bloody to be palatable for the general population. Now it seems like it's the perfect balance has been struck in the marketing of this sport. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, last time, I mean, we haven't came out to Atlanta too much. You know, there's been a couple fights in the last 5 years. They got Rashad and John Jones, and then I think Rashad and Chuck Liddell years back. But before that, it was like UFC 15, and before that, it was old school days. I think the James Brown Arena, something like that. It was.
Well, they have them at Buffalo Wild Wings now every once in a while, like once a month. It's kind of a lower tier sort of thing. Bunch of amateur bouts and the headlining bouts like a professional bout.
Yeah. Back in the day, there was eye gouging, hair pulling, and even people be grabbing the jewels and everything. So it was there's a lot of things. They refine the sport, and there's a lot. It's a lot more fan friendly, and I think it's perfect now. I don't really see too many problems except for the judging, but it's
just like boxing. This not a big departure.
Yeah, it's not affecting the fan side. They still get to watch a good fight. So that's
hey, Luke, you come to the UFC through the Strike Force experience. How has that been, sort of the consolidation really of everything under Dana White's UFC? And it seems like some of the lesser, let's say, realms have now become almost like a minor league leading up to the UFC, haven't they?
Yeah, it's once Strikeforce is done, it's pretty much the UFC, and there's a couple other organizations, but nothing's on our level here. It's good to be here. As a fighter, I've always dreamed of being in the UFC, and I'm glad they closed down Strikeforce. It gives me an opportunity to be the best in the world. I was kind of limited, being the champion in Strikeforce. I couldn't really up my status and my ranking. I live to be the best, and that's what I'm here for. And so